Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tatiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. To avoid killing living things, I vow to avoid taking what is not given. I vow to avoid sensual misconduct. I vow to avoid false speech. I vow to avoid malicious speech. I vow to avoid harsh speech. I vow to avoid gossip. I vow to avoid covetousness. I vow to avoid ill will. I vow to avoid wrong view. Yes. Well, this happens to be an auspicious day in the Buddhist calendar. It's actually the time of the month when we traditionally do Ovada Patimokkha. And this is a time where we make our confessions to the other members of the Sangha. So in monasteries and nunneries all over the world, because we all do it at the same time, it's a time that we recite, bring to memory the vows that we've taken, and we tell others of our offenses, and we get advice, and we do this every month, and a tradition arose around this, and that's what I want to talk about this morning just a little bit. The Buddha gave a talk, and this talk was sort of like a distillation of what's really important on the path, what's really important in our practice. And just as, you know, the Hebrew precepts, I think there were like 600 and something, 613, and they got distilled into 10 by Moses, and those 10 got distilled into 2 by Jesus. Love God with all your heart and love your brother like you love yourself. And so, and in the same way, we see the evolution of something, this distillation of something. And it teaches us, it gives us an example of how we grow and how we progress. And so training guidelines are like putting those little wheels on a two-wheel on a bicycle. They just like to help keep you steady so that you don't fall off. And the wheels are kind of askew. In one sense, they're meant to constrain, but in the other sense, not so much that you can't find your own ground of being, that you can, not so much that you can't figure out for yourself how to apply something, how to understand something, how to reflect properly or appropriately, how to really look at something and get the gist of why something happens. And the purpose is just so that you can know what not to do in the future. You can know how not to be. We can learn something in this way. And it's a self-training. It's not a training anybody else gives us. It's when something happens in our life, we turn back and reflect and say, how did this come about? And what can I do differently if I don't like this result? And so this is how we grow. And if we don't do that ourselves, then people keep giving us a nudge, you know. But people don't have to give us a nudge. We can do it ourselves. Like my little granddaughter was saying when I was trying to help her tie her shoe. I said, no, Grandma, by myself. By myself. She wanted to do it herself. Well, what's so wonderful about our practice is that it is that which we do take up freely, and we work on by ourselves. So there's nobody that's saying to you, except your teacher, when you give your teacher permission to help, God help. You know, actually, one of the roles of a teacher is like to point out faults, not in a pointing out way, but in the kind of way that helps you find a way of escape, so that you don't continually suffer confounded because you don't understand how this got to be this way, or how you found yourself in a certain situation, or why this is always happening to you. And sometimes it's just a matter of correcting the lens a little bit, and then making a new pair of glasses. Speaking of glasses, you know, I didn't bring them today, but I just got two new pair in the mail, one for me and one for Ponte Deepa. They have lights on the bottom, and the purpose is because sometimes I'm in a Dharma hall and it's dark and we don't have lights, and I can just switch on my little lights right here, and I can see. Then sometimes when I'm on retreat, or I don't always have my own room, and we're in dormitory style, you know, so that I don't disturb anybody else. You know, I just flick on these little lights and I can read all night without disturbing anybody. And they're the LED lights, so they're very direct, yet they're very bright, and you can be right here and there's no light. You know, so I just think technology is wonderful, even though it's expensive. It helps us to improve, to get better when we use technology for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. So this distillation of the law, of the rule, teaches us how we should relate to one another, and it just said, love your neighbor like you love yourself. You know? And some of us don't really love ourselves that much, or we love ourselves but we don't know how to treat ourselves. And because we don't, we also allow others to treat us any kind of way. You know? So we can't say, well, there's something wrong with them. It gets back to a matter of knowing how, you know, to treat yourself, how to respect yourself. And once you find that, then you have a standard, you have a guideline, you know, for what you will accept as okay in treatment from others. And so a lot of the issues that we have in this country, and particularly among women, I won't say that we don't have it with males, because we certainly do, and I don't need to minimize or diminish, you know, in any sense, but particularly amongst women, it's why they are so prone to allowing abuse. You know, and we talk so much about sexual abuse because that's something you can see. You can see the bruise, you can see the swelling, you can see the cut. You know. But verbal abuse and the psychological abuse and the fear that goes with that and the constant anxiety. You know, and I hear it as I travel all around the country, woman after woman after woman. You know, it says, well, I just don't say anything. I just let it, well, you don't have to say anything, but you don't have to stay either. You know, I mean, if saying something can change something, then we should say something, you know. And sometimes it can just be as much as, you know, I don't accept, you know, that way of speaking to me. You know, I want to hear what you have to say. Come back when you can say it in in a different way, you know. And that's it, you know. Sometimes that can't happen. If you're strong enough that it doesn't bruise, it doesn't injure, say if you're strong enough, then you can stay. And maybe in being the way you are, you can be an example to the other. You can allow room for change for the other. You can apply cultivate the perfection of patience. But I say if you can't, then it serves no useful purpose at all. And so we have to learn how, but there are these aspects of craving around relationship that make us tolerate things, around a sense of need or sense of just having a neediness. Sometimes it's around laziness, you know, because that one will do it for me. So I tolerate all the other stuff because, you know, I don't want to have to go. I had one lady, you know, and she told me about just a horrible condition. And her husband actually wants to go, you know. And she's saying, no, because I can't take care of myself. I said, you can't because you don't have a job. You get a job, you can't take care of yourself, you know. But she wants to be taken care of. He wants to go. So how do you think he treats her? So there's no point in calling me for a conversation, crying every week about how he treats us because he's already made his point clear. And the only reason he hasn't left is out of respect for her, saying, okay, I'll give you time to get yourself together. Now this is not a discourse on how to break up with your partner. Don't misunderstand me now. I'm just talking about some things because we have this idea that there are not times of coming in and times of going out. We have this idea that, we make these vows about things, and then we try to stick to the vow when the actual situation calls for a different loving response. And we let our fear keep us from seizing our freedom. Yeah.
I thought one of the points of this practice is not to allow the external to affect you.
Well, not letting something affect you is not the same as staying in something that's absolutely no good and not useful for you. And so we have to be able to make the distinction. And a lot of times we cannot because we're trying to live up to an ideal or live up to a rule or live up to a standard. And so part of it is us doing our practice. That's why I say, you don't, I can say, sometimes I don't have to leave mad, but I do have to leave. That's what I'm saying. Or I might say to you, you don't have to leave mad, but you do have to go. And so it's a difference. It's about where you're coming from inside with a stillness, with a recognition of right. I missed the conversation we had on the word right a couple of weeks ago. I was out of town, but I got actually email was from Panya Deepa, and because he doesn't do internet, they come to me, and I read it and I gave it to him, but I also responded to it. And the person that he said, well, I don't think that right's a good word to use, or like right and wrong. I don't think good's a good word to use like good or bad, because I don't think anything is right or wrong, anything is good or bad. And I'm like, well, then I don't know what planet you're on, because some things really are not right. And there's a natural arising. My 2-year-old granddaughter, which is a lot older now, but when she was 2 or 3, and my daughter took her to daycare, and she loved daycare for a few weeks. And then one day, when her mom got ready to take her, she went into a hissy fit. Like, no, I don't want to go. And she was crying and kicking and screaming, and she took her anyway. Okay, so when she got there, she was like trembling. She just didn't want to go. And my daughter was saying to her, okay, get yourself together. I don't have time for this because I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late for work. I have to leave you here today. No, I want to stay with you, Mommy. So anyway, she took her in. And then the owner of the daycare, the woman, received her, and then she was all right. But then the woman's husband came in the room, and the granddaughter went off into another hissy fit. And when she called me about it, I said, you go back. At work, she left her. I said, you go back and you get her. I said, because you're not being watchful. She's sending you a message. She's sending you a signal. She can't articulate it to you, but something has occurred there. So we have to use our wisdom, and we have to be vigilant. We have to be watchful. And that's how, it's not that we suddenly become a whipping post so that we, and sometimes our practice is to sit with something, don't get me wrong. But many times we find out there's been such trauma in our lives. You know, it's hard for a wound to heal if you keep pouring salt in it. You know? So sometimes we have to move it to a place where we can cover it with a patch and allow it to heal. Then if you want to go back to that situation, then you can go back. And so I started out talking about husbands and wives, but I don't mean just husbands and wives. I mean friends. I mean people come together for different reasons. The basic quality of relationship and basic quality of mutual respect should be formed. Now, sometimes we're getting what we deserve. One of the kids called me and said, Mom, Waddy, I just can't deal with so-and-so because he's like this. And he went on to tell me like all his faults. I said, oh, son, that's just a mirror for you. I said, because you're just like that. I said, so now you know how it feels. He said, oh, come on, Mom, what? That's not fair. I said, no, it's not. But life's not fair, and people don't always do fairly. That's what I'm saying to you. And I said, so if you really want to see what the lesson is in this, watch him closely, because I'm telling you, you're just like him. And when you see that, if you don't want to be like that, look for that when that rises up in you, that selfishness, that self-seeking way, that egotistical way, that proud way that you have, that conceit that you have. So see how you do the same thing, using people, taking advantage of their kindness. I said, yeah, I'll let you take advantage of my kindness because I'm doing my practice. And she said, it's a thankless job. All the kids take advantage of me. But I recognize that for a minute, they need to have the advantage. That's all. Just for a minute in their life, having the advantage. And to see what it feels like to be on the other side. To not be taken advantage of, to not be discarded or not be considered or respected in any kind of way. And they try out that other side because they think that other side is the power side. But in that relationship, when they feel, it's a development because they're numb, but developing a feeling, and suddenly they may do something, like take something, and I let it go. But I was touched by it. And they can feel that after a while. And suddenly, there is something in them that says that wasn't right, or that didn't feel good. Or I thought just having it was, would make me happy. But taking it from her to have it doesn't feel good. This is not a thing you can read and say, here boy, read the book. You can't just read it and get it out of a book. It's experiential. You have to go through. So we all have need go through scenario. We all have need to encounter the vicissitudes of life, because in that we learn how to treat the other. And we also learn what is beneficial or not beneficial for oneself. So this is how we should apply the training guidelines. The wheels are skewed so that we can lean a little to the left and a little to the right until we find out how to steady ourselves. And then we find out where we need to be or where we can be or where someone will allow our presence to be. We can find out whether we're strong enough to handle something. We actually get stronger, but you get stronger by lifting the weights. So the Buddha gave this very short, and I know you won't like that because I can get long-winded, but he gave the shortest discourse. And I was so impressed with this discourse that it's my discourse for the day. All that was the preliminary. Here's the discourse. He said, see, after, now this was, everybody gathered and it was like, over 1,000 arhats had gathered to hear this profound teaching of the Buddha. And he said, cease to do evil. Stop it. Just stop. Cultivate what is good and purify your heart. This is the way of awakened ones. He said, patient endurance is the ultimate asceticism. It's not so much of these external, we talk about secluded, quite secluded, but it's secluded from what? Secluded from unwholesome mental states. So if we, as we build up our tolerance, we can sit in the presence of things, and we can let them be whatever they're going to be, and we can just do whatever it is that we have to do. And he says that if you can develop that kind of patience, that's the ultimate asceticism. And it leads to a profound liberation, and that is the supreme goal. So the supreme goal is the profound liberation. Now, if, we always say, when you get good enough, you'll be able to sit in the middle of a highway and meditate. And yeah, that's true, but why would you want to? So you need to be able to, but you could choose. Your choice is not taken from you. You can choose about whether you want to or not. And so we're always choosing whether we realize it or not. We're choosing, and even when we've made a choice, when we sustain that choice, we're still choosing. We're choosing in the present moment. So sometimes we have to continually to reflect to see if my choice needs to be different at this time. What inures, to actually the contentment and the well-being of all. So this is about mental states. It's not so much about what we do out here on the outside. Yes?
My question is, this ongoing analysis sounds just exactly right to me. I lapse over into judgments, and I know that that's wrong. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I can. Judgment or this, the Buddha says we have what's called latent imperfections, latent mental imperfections, inherent tendencies. That means that there is the potential, there is the seed there, and that's another whole Dharma talk on rebirth linking consciousness that I'm not going to go into today. But just know that there resides already that potential to wrong view, the potential to aversion, the potential for hatred, the potential for anger, the potential. So, and the potential for judging people out of that mental imperfection. So the way that we overcome it is first to recognize that we have it, but second, to realize that it's not that I'm just a bad guy, I do that kind of thing. Because then we start to try to get hard on ourselves, turn the judgment on ourselves, and then we can never turn off the judgment, you know. And so it is first to recognize that it's flowering up because I have not applied appropriate attention to the things I should. I have applied inappropriate attention to things that I shouldn't have. So we understand that there's a reason for it. We understand the second is that it is a latent tendency, not something I just decide to do, you know, or that's like just the way I am, but it's a latent tendency. So that takes some of the pressure off of us to change, because I understand, almost like being able to be patient with a child, because you can recognize, you know, that they don't know any better. They're confounded about why they even think that way, you know, and so they beat themselves up because they think that way. Now understand, you know, this is something that was in you, that because I've watered it in a certain way, it has sprung up and it's grown. So the way to make something die is to take away its nutriment, is to stop watering it, is to stop feeding it. If you keep watering it and feeding it, you can never change it. So he gives us methods of abandoning by restraining, or abandoning by using something, or abandoning, you know, by, so he gives us these like 7 different ways of dismantling, laying the axe to the root of unwholesome mental states. So if you look and right away say that you're judging someone, first of all, you know that I am judging, right? You know, and you can, and that should stop you right there, because now you just turned your attention from them, from the one that you're judging, and you're turning to yourself, and you're looking at yourself, you know, and you're saying, this is an unwholesome behavior. Now, how does my unwholesome behavior differ from his? It really doesn't. His is unwholesome, mine is unwholesome. His, I can't do anything about. Mine, I can do something about it right in this minute. Oh, judging, I see that, you know. And my way of dealing with things like that is just like that, because as I turn to myself and see, oh, I have a little taint here, I got a little spot right here. Gosh, good thing that I'm looking, that this came to my attention. That's not important to me, because that's throwing me off of my own goal, my own mark. You know, by the time I finished this dialogue with myself, I actually forgot about what you were doing. You know, I was just right here with myself. That's not the only way to handle it, but it's a kind way of deflecting the attention away from where you were placing it back to yourself and recognize something. I see you rocking, Pundy. Does that mean you want to say something? Okay. And so, well, I know he must be thinking, because he's always very still. And actually, for our teacher training, we were working on this last night, so it was really interesting that you brought up that particular question. And maybe we'll have a more open training on the 7 ways of abandoning unwholesome mental states. But that's one way, and that's a kind way, and that's a beginning way. That the minute the attention goes out to judge what someone else has done, turn back to yourself and recognize I am judging. And what does judging do? What mental state does it feed in me? You know, this is applying appropriate attention, because he says we should cut off arisen unwholesome mental states. And the only way you can cut it off is to turn to it, acknowledge it, and deliberately look in a different direction. And that was applying kindness to yourself. You see? So kindness kills judgment. And as you kill that judgment for yourself for judging, then you also weaken your propensity to judge another. You know. So the work we do it like within ourselves. This is really our training ground. But if we're really doing it in ourselves, then we can also apply. You know, it's almost like water seeks the lowest level and it just rolls downstream. So it'll hit you after a while, you know, and my relationship to you as I work on myself and my relationship to myself. Now I'm a person with many faults. It says one way that you know a person of integrity is that they're quick to tell their faults. I used to get these emails all the time that says, Panyawadi, you should not be telling you know, these faults you have to people in the Sangha, you know, because we have to maintain a certain image, you know. But I mean, what good is image if you're like just filthy inside, you know? It serves no useful purpose at all. And so we were reading last night, and instead one of integrity is quick to tell his own stuff, you know. So that was my vindication. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm quick about that, but don't just tell it to be telling it, you know. I tell it to give you some confidence that you can accept yourself, all the good and all the bad. Accepting doesn't mean like just saying, no, that's who I am, this is what you get, you know, but it means being able to look and not be so judgmental on yourself, because you can never break the habit of being judgmental towards others if you have not learned how to be kindly to yourself. So mostly we need to give a little more kindness to ourselves. You know, and the thing about it, kindness is not weakness. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. That kindness is sometimes having to do the tough things. Sometimes, you know, kindness is having to do the inconvenient things. And we just have to suck it up and deal with it. So every decision we make is not going to be easy. It's not going to even be a satisfying one. But to the best of our understanding, you know, we try to make the right one. So, this was his talk. This is how we cultivate restraint with respect to training. And we develop our own integrity. And then we don't hold other people responsible. You know, we take responsibility for whatever happens in our life. We can take responsibility, you know, for whatever decision has to be made. We can take responsibility when we acted and it was a good decision, or in hindsight, it wasn't so good a decision. You know? We can have the courage to go and try to correct something, that some mistake we made. We can accept if we don't have the opportunity to go back and correct. You know? And so as we learn to deal with ourselves this way, then we learn, it becomes natural that we deal with others in this same way. And there was a power to this. There was a confidence in this. And there's a stability in this. So we always think that compassion is so, it's weepy and it's sticky, but it's not that at all. But it's being able with a firm and a steady mind, a clear mind of how to make a situation better. You know, some medicine is bitter. And some corrections take the knife. Surgery is painful. But then after the pain, after the healing, we come out better, come out stronger. So I guess if he could give a Dharma talk in 3 lines, that's why they say you shouldn't talk too much. Just take these 50 sayings of the Buddha to heart and feed yourself with it. Okay? Okay. any other questions? Anybody would like to share anything? Please feel free.
I have a question. I've had a conversation with a couple different people about happiness coming from within, and they talk about, people who are happy but do harmful things, and how they want justice. And I say that people who do harmful things aren't happy. Bernie Madoff, how happy can he truly be? And because he has taken money from little old retired couples. I mean, how happy can he be? And I think that he can't be. When you act like that, how can you be happy, truly?
We do things because we think it will make us happy. Sometimes once we've started doing something and we find out, well, it's not making us happy, or, when we see the bad side of something, we don't always fully understand the slope. So maybe it's a little movement because you have some wiggle room and you like just hang on the edge. And then after a while you start moving the boundaries. Then you start blurring the lines. And then you say, oh, well, I'm a little bit over the line here. I need to bring this back into kilter. And the way I'll bring it back into kilter is I'll hedge my bet on that, because that was a sure winner. Then you hedge your bet on that, and then that's lost. Now you're double in the hole. Now you're like, okay, I gotta cover this up. And now, so what the Buddha says is that some mental defilements we have color other states of mind. And that's how the slippery slope occurs. So what in the beginning, many times from some successes that brought a little ease, a little cavalier attitude. You understand what I'm saying? Doesn't always start, but it just turned ugly, and you just kept moving that boundary, and then you find yourself in a pickle. Now you're trying to make it up. And then after a while you get so far you can't make it up. Now you have to do what? Cover it up, and that's how things work. So then the very thing that you thought would bring you happiness, you see how it has not brought you happiness. I remember when he told his sons, and how it was more than just shame, It was like the deep regret and pain he felt, and that doesn't mean that there's not consequences. There's definitely consequences, and so you have to live with that. But he himself acknowledged, the great suffering he personally experienced in deceiving. That does not get anybody their money back, but it's true. So sometimes we're doing something and we think it's making us happy. And in the beginning it does make us happy. But after a while, what the Buddha says is all happiness fades, because within happiness, or within pleasure, I'll say, is the seed of pain. It's there. So not seeing clearly, not having right view, is not being able to see the seed of pain that is within pleasure. But when we see something as pleasurable and we can enjoy it without, we also have a difficulty to see the seed of craving that's inherent. That means that when I like it, I want more. So suddenly this is not enough, I need a little bit more. If you look at like guys who have pornography addictions, and they say, well, I just started looking at a few girly magazines, and then before I knew it, they were getting, it was expanding into more degrading types of and more. So now that it's on the internet, some on the internet 24/7, and it just moves into more and more debauchery, because that is the nature of pleasure. When we are bound up with it, with the taint of craving, that it's never enough. We're junkies, no matter what we have. we get used to that level, and then we need more to keep the same high. You know, about the only place that doesn't hold true is when we want to have children. I do have a couple like that for now. but you know, generally pleasures like that. So we want bigger, we want better, we want more. You know, because the thrill deadens. And so this is some of the pleasure. But we don't have to work so much on the thing that gives us pleasure. What we need to work on is the craving, the attachment to it. That's our work. That's our internal work. And if we can work on that, then we will find happiness because we're not craving, desiring something. You can have your things, but recognize how they also have you. Recognize your attachment to them. Recognize, the Buddha talks about, I think it's 4, it might be 5 things that we have an inability to share with others. And you know the first one he named? Housing. He said dwellings. That, you know, everybody got to have their own house. It could be one person in it, and it can be 4 bedrooms and cost $500, but I just can't live with anybody else. Everybody's got to have their own house. It's just amazing to me, you know, how he talked about that. And it was one reason he brought them, his community together. You know, he said, you know, this doesn't take all of this. You don't need all of this. And, you know, then when you have one house, then the next time, you know, when you go to buy another house, it's always a move, what?
Oh,
Up. It's always a move up. You gotta have a bigger house, a better neighborhood, a better street. And, you know, and this is the way of pleasure and craving around pleasure. So that's not happiness. Happiness, if you thought of one word that's tied to happiness, I would say it's contentment. Contentment, being contented. You know, contented with what you have. Sometimes, you know, I want to get out of a relationship because the pop is gone. It's not exciting like it was before, you know. I have to have excitement. You know, contentment is what brings us happiness. So we can look at our level of contentment in life, and we can know something about our level of happiness. And that contentment comes from being rooted, being steady, being still inside. Something may come and rock your world, you know, but it's just like that little blow up. You see a little bouncy doll, like you hit it and it falls over, but it just comes right back up instead. And you hit it and it falls up and it comes right back up. It's like it because of it's weighted, it's rooted, and that's how we can be steady. So that even though the winds may blow, something comes in our life, we wish it wasn't there, but it is there. We can have the courage to look at, square up, face it, and to deal with it. All things change. You know, it's just whether we'll be steady enough to be around when the change comes. Yeah. Any announcements? Yes, yes. Can somebody close the camera for me?
I've been asked to call Robert's.